Alright guys, today I was going to do a video on how to read your 401k statement every year, or even on a quarterly basis. Your company may give you a statement for your 401k, also known as a retirement statement, retirement account statement. I am in the federal government and I have a 401k that goes by the name of the Thrift Savings Plan, and this is what the statement looks like every year that I get it. So I wanted to create the video to show you how to read it. Created the video at the behest of my brother, who was asking me for help to interpret his for him. Um, my statement and his statement, and virtually any statement that's given by a company for a 401k is going to be the same. So that's why I'm just using mine as an example. And most of the information in there will be the same. So before I do that, I want to just go a quick history on 401ks. If you just Google 401k, the guy that created it was a gentleman by the name of Ted Benna. And 401k was created after many years of companies just giving their employees pension plans. Now, if you have a pension plan, you're a whole lot better off than a 401k because a pension plan guarantees you a set amount of money for all the years upon you leaving into retirement. Um, Versus a 401k, it's your responsibility to give so much to it so that you can have enough to retire. And that's part of the problem with the 401k is I believe that when it was enacted by Congress in 1978, that due to um, people not educating themselves on what it was and what they needed to save and how they needed to save and how much they needed to save. That's why most people that are ready to retire now don't have enough in the retirement account. Now, my last video went over how I have in my account just as much as a 59-year-old, and so that speaks volumes on. Um, that's the average. The average account balance of a 59-year-old is about 150,000, and that's about what I have in my account at 35 years of age. So that's why I created my website, this YouTube channel, and I try to talk to people about this because if you start contributing to your 401k early, which that's what you should be doing, then you'll be prepared when it comes time to retirement. Um, it's up to you to educate yourself on the 401k, how it works, your particular company's 401k, this, that, and the other. Now, if you work for Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, or another big company, your 401k probably allows you to buy stock in the company. Um, my 401k, all I'm invested in is not my company because I work for the federal government. Um, my 401k is comprised of index funds. Now, there's a book out there. There's two books that I'd like you to read if you have a chance. The first one is 401 Chaos. This actually goes over the ins and outs of what a 401k is and actually the issues there are with them. And then the other book that I highly recommend is by John C. Bogle. It's a little book on common sense investing. And this little book is a really good book because John C. Bogle, who is the founder of Vanguard, created it to make it easy for people to retire. Um, my my 401k is comprised of index funds, and that's what he created. He created a company that solely is index funds, comprised of index funds. So I highly recommend those two books if you have a chance to read them. Um, and once again, the 401k was created to put the onus on the employee to save for retirement instead of the onus being on the employer. And it actually saves the employer a lot of money because the employer doesn't have to provide a pension plan anymore because that was very expensive for them because they had to guarantee a certain amount of money for their employees for all the years that they were going to be in retirement versus with the 401k, it's much cheaper for them, and that's why big corporations, I'm sure, were pandering towards Congress to get the 401k enacted and get the responsibility of their employees' retirement off their shoulders and onto their employees' and shoulders. So now we're stuck with 401ks, and that's why it's so important that you just understand what they are and what your employer's allowing you to invest in, and if they have a match, this, that, and the other. So let's go on to the actual statement. So this is my statement. I got it last year. Um, Starting from the top, working down, it tells me that I've been invested since 2010. So, or sorry, I've been invested. I don't know what the 6/7/2010 is. I've been invested since 2006. So about 14 years. Um, it tells me the value of my 401k in October 1st of 2019 was 98,803. In the traditional, which for TSP people, the traditional means that's the amount of money that'll be taxed when I turn or when I start withdrawing out of my retirement. So 57 or so. The Roth is what I had. That's how much money I had in the Roth part of my 401k, which that means that this portion will be taxed now, not later. And the total in my account as of October 1st was 121,575. Between October and December, the valuation went from 121,575 to 132. I contributed between October and December 5,075 and 14 cents. And between October and December, I made 5,529 and 7 cents. I like this better than what I just went over because it's just the whole year. It tells me that at the beginning of the year, I had $98,000 in the account. At the end of the year, I between my contributions and my um, investment gains, I got 34,000 additional. So I have 130. I had 132,000 at the end of December 31st. The total amount of return I made in those years were, or in that year, was 13.74%. So the way that works is in every month you'll have a return, and they get the average of each month. So, for instance, I'm just going to pretend that I have 12 months worth of returns. I'm just going to make up these numbers. January I had 5%, February 4%, March 6, April 7, May 9, June 12%, July 13%, August 11%, September 5%, October 10%, November 6%, and December 8%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is how they would do it. In 12 months, those were the returns for each month. When you divide that by 12, I would have made 8%. That would have been my average return for 1 year. So that's what they did here. The average in 12 months came out to be 13.74%. Going down, this is the summary of the account. So it's kind of a more comprehensive version of the first page. Tells me that after what I'm going to be paying when I retire. This is the traditional stuff that I'll be taxed later on this, and I'll be taxed now on this. The total being 98,000. This is in January. I contributed 4,260 to the traditional, 4,260 to the Roth. a total of 8,520. So once again, if your company has a match, in this case, I have a match of 5%. So um, I'm making about 85,200. 85,200 times 0.05 is 4,260. And they will match that and give me an additional 4,260. So that's my total contributions. That's why it's 5% and 5%. I have an outstanding loan with my retirement. I'll create a different video in the future on that. And then total gains for the year were 14,611. And when you add your contributions, the reason why they added the loan payment is because I'm paying myself the interest and the loan. That's why they're adding it back to my account. And then the total gains I made were added as well. So the total after a year is 132,179. When you go down here, you have, once again, I contributed this much to the Roth, this much to traditional, and then the 1% that my agency, so they do 5%, but of that 5%, 1% goes, they don't match the total 5% of the Roth. They just do one, like, they only do most of it to the, I guess you would say 4% to the traditional. Why they do that, I don't know, but that's how that works. And there's the total. Once again, that's the 5% plus the 5%, 5% that I contribute and the 5% that the government matches. During my about 14 years with the government, I have contributed a total of $76,734. So that means that if I have 132,749, that of that I have contributed 76,734 divided by 132,179. That means that I have contributed 58% of the total, and that's the 32% is what I have gained from contributions and the return. This just goes over what my money's in. So my account right now is distributed in such a manner where I have 48% of it in the AL 2050 fund and 52% in the safe AL income fund. And the reason why I did that was just due to the volatility of the market. I didn't want all of my 132,000 to be at the mercy of a stock market crash. So I just put it in, most of it in the safer fund, and then the rest of it's in the 2050 fund. And then as far as the contributions, my 5% contributions and the 5% contributions of the government, 100% of that goes towards the 2050 fund. So I'm totally vested in the stock market right now, relative to my contributions, but what I have in there is safeguarded by the safer fund. This shows right here how the fund performed. So the fund that I'm in, it averages the 1 year return of 23.33, and my actual return was 13.74. it tells you. So then it says that in 3 years the average return is 11.26. In the last 3 years I've gotten a 6.32, and then in 5 years 8.49% compared to in actual 5 years 3.58. So the next thing it tells you, and this is very important, the amount of expenses you're paying. This is probably the most important part of this video. When you're looking at your statement, you need to know what percentage you're paying towards expense, the expense ratio, expense fees. It might even be called management fees. I pay 0.042%, which is very minuscule relative to other 401ks. In some cases, people can be paying upwards of 1%. And 1% doesn't sound a lot, but if you actually do the calculations over 30 years, that 1% that you're giving somebody to manage your money really eats into your costs. So, for instance, it says right here that I only pay for every $1,000 I invest 42 cents. So once again, that's 0.042% of 1,000. So 1,000 times 0.042 is 42 cents. Oops, sorry. 1,000 times 0.00042 is 42 cents. So once again, 0.042% is my expense ratio. And when you multiply 0.042% by 1,000, which I just did here, there's your 42 cents. So if you're paying 1% on 1,000, that means that you're paying $10, because 1% of 1,000 is $10. And that's just on your first $1,000. If you're actually investing $10,000, then you're actually going to be paying $100. So it really racks up, and that's why it's important to know what you're paying. In my 401k, the company, the government invests in what are called index funds. There's a really good book I recommend called The Little Book on Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle. John C. Bogle is the founder of Vanguard and the author and founder of index funds. An index fund, all it is you're invested in a crap load of companies. So the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial, the small market cap stocks. Those are the ones that I have in my 401k. And so when I put money into my 401k, it goes into the big market versus I'm not invested in like one company. I'm not invested in Facebook. I'm not invested in Google. I'm not invested in Netflix. I'm invested in all of them. Is essentially what an index fund is. And that's why I am an advocate of index funds versus what are called managed funds, because with index funds, the fees are much, much cheaper versus managed funds or active funds, or um, the expenses are much, much more expensive. Um, the other book that I highly recommend you read is 401 Chaos. It goes over the history of 401ks and the ins and outs. So back to the statement. Then the last page, it actually goes over much of the same, really. It says that in the L2050 fund, I have an ending balance of 63,302. I gained this much. If this value is ever shown in a parentheses, then it means that's a loss. So if you see on your statement a number in parentheses, that means you lost that much. There's the ending balance again. In this case, on the next line item, it shows you or me how much I was paying for shares at the beginning of the year versus at the end of the year, and then that's really the value of the stocks that I was buying at the beginning versus the end. I had at the beginning of the year 18,864.5 shares, and at the end I had 2,815 shares. Same thing goes for the L income fund. And then if you have a loan, it'll tell you what your beginning principal is. This is what I paid myself with interest, and then this is what I have to pay back. So I hope this video helped. Please comment as to whether it did or not, and if you haven't, please go to my YouTube channel and also my website, tspandme.com. Um, Everything's free. I do this just to help people, try to help people understand what their retirement's all about and other things, investment wise. Appreciate your guys' listenership, readership, and viewership. Thanks.